The WNBA just let someone choke Caitlyn Clark on live TV and did absolutely nothing. By the end of this video, you are going to see something that will make you question everything you thought you knew about professional basketball. Shaquille O'Neal, a man who survived the most brutal era of NBA basketball, watched what happened on June 24th, 2026, and said words nobody expected to come out of his mouth. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you is just the beginning. The real story? It gets so much worse. Before we dive in, if you're new here, we cover the biggest stories in basketball every single day. Hit subscribe and turn on all notifications right now so you never miss a breakdown like this one. The bell icon. Click it. Let's go. The incident. June 24th, 2026. Phoenix Mercury versus Indiana Fever. A regular season WNBA game that became one of the most talked about moments in women's basketball history. Not because of a buzzer beater, not because of a record broken, not because of a performance no one will ever forget. It became famous because of what one player did to another player while she was lying defenseless on the ground, and because of what the referees chose to do about it, which was absolutely nothing. Let me paint you the exact picture of what happened. 3 minutes into the second quarter, players are scrambling for a loose ball. Normal basketball. Physical, competitive. Exactly what fans pay to watch. The ball leaves the play. The whistle should have blown, or the game moves on. That's how basketball works at every level, from your local rec center all the way up to the highest stage of professional sports. Once the ball is gone, the play is dead. Except Alyssa Thomas didn't get that message. With Caitlyn Clark already down on the court, completely defenseless, the ball long gone from the area, Alyssa Thomas drove her fist into Clark's throat. Not an accidental collision, not a bang-bang play where two bodies meet going for the same ball. A deliberate fist to the throat of a player already on the ground. And then, as if Clark were a piece of furniture, as if she were something inanimate on the floor, Thomas stepped directly over her and walked away. No pause, no acknowledgement, no reaction at all, like she didn't exist. And the referee? Standing on the baseline, right there, watching, called nothing. Caitlyn Clark left the game with a back injury and did not return. What the replay shows. Now here is where it gets undeniable. Replay footage shows two separate contact points on a player who was already down on the court after the ball was already dead. The fist to the throat. Then the knee driven into her leg. Two deliberate, targeted contacts on a defenseless player, with a referee in clear sightline of both. Not one foul called. Not a technical. Not even a conversation with either player. The officials reviewed the play at the monitor and still did nothing. Think about that for a moment. They watched it again. With the benefit of slowed-down replay, with multiple camera angles, with the ability to pause and rewind, and they still walked away from the monitor without making a call. This is the part that goes beyond the incident itself. This is where trust between fans and a league starts to break down. Because if the technology exists to review a play, and the result of that review is still nothing, what message does that send? What does it tell every player in the league about what they can and cannot do on the floor? That is the real scandal here. And we're just getting started. Keep watching. Stay right here. Because what Shaquille O'Neal said about this, coming up in just a moment, is something that no one in basketball expected. When Shaq speaks on physical play, the entire sport listens. And what he said about Caitlyn Clark is going to change how you see this entire story. Who is Alyssa Thomas? Before we talk about the reaction from the basketball world, let's be fair and give you full context. Alyssa Thomas is a veteran WNBA player. She has built her career on physicality. She plays hard. She plays aggressive. These are not insults. These are the qualities that have kept her in this league for years. Physical players are part of every great basketball team. Toughness is celebrated. Contact is expected. But there is a line. Every sport has one. Every player who has ever competed at a professional level understands where that line is, even when no one says it out loud. You can be as physical as you want during live play. You can box out hard. You can set screens that take people's breath away. You can battle for position in ways that leave bruises. What you do not do is strike someone in the throat after the ball is gone. What you do not do is hit someone who is already on the ground. What you do not do is use the cover of a basketball game to deliver contact that would not be acceptable anywhere else. That's not toughness. That's not competition. That's something else entirely. Shaquille O'Neal enters the conversation. Now let's talk about why the basketball world collectively stopped when Shaquille O'Neal weighed in on this situation. Because if you don't understand who Shaq is in the context of physical basketball, you don't understand why his voice carries so much weight here. 7 feet, 1 inch tall. 4 NBA championships. Hall of Fame. The most physically dominant player the sport has ever produced. Every single night of his career, Shaquille O'Neal stepped onto an NBA floor knowing that every team had spent the entire week game planning how to slow him down. And slowing him down almost always involved making him as uncomfortable as physically possible. Defenders hung on him, fouled him intentionally, hit him in ways that would have sent smaller players to the training room. He took all of it. He played through all of it. He won through all of it. This is not a man who is sensitive about physical basketball. This is not a man who cries foul at the first hard contact. When Shaquille O'Neal looks at something that happens on a basketball court and says it crossed a line, you listen. And here is something important about Shaq's relationship with Caitlyn Clark before this moment. He was not her biggest supporter. He said so himself, openly and publicly. On a podcast, Shaq admitted that he was a self-described hater when it came to Clark. He didn't believe in her long-range shooting. He told his audience repeatedly that she wasn't going to make the big shots when it mattered. His loyalty was with Angel Reese, whom he has publicly championed as one of his favorite players in the league. But then something happened. He watched Caitlyn Clark play. Not highlights, not social media clips. He actually watched. And what he saw forced him to completely reverse his position. He told Sports Illustrated, in his own words, that Clark does everything right, that she makes the right play, that she makes the right pass. And then he said something that is now absolutely critical to understanding this entire conversation. He noted that she doesn't really complain when players try to rough her up. Shaq watched the physicality directed at Clark and acknowledged it was real. He recognized the pattern. He noticed she was being targeted, and he respected that she handled it with composure. He said she was the real deal, even at this early stage of her career. And then came June 24th, 2026, and even Shaq reached his limit. There is something else happening beneath the surface of this story that almost nobody is talking about. 2 weeks before Alyssa Thomas put her fist into Caitlyn Clark's throat, someone tried to warn the entire basketball world that this exact moment was coming. And they named Shaquille O'Neal specifically when they said it. I'll tell you exactly who said it and exactly what they said right after this. Robert Horry's warning. 2 weeks before the incident on June 24th, Robert Horry sat down with Fox News Digital and gave Caitlyn Clark a piece of advice. Robert Horry is not just another former basketball player. He is a 7-time NBA champion. He played alongside Shaquille O'Neal during the Lakers dynasty. He has seen championship-level basketball from the inside. He understands what it means to be the most targeted player on the floor because he played next to one of the most targeted players in NBA history. What Horry said to Clark was direct. He told her that everyone wants to knock you down when you're the best. He said he believed multiple players in the league were actively coming after her. He said the reason it continued was that some of her teammates hadn't done enough to defend her when these moments happened. And then he gave her his personal advice. Protect yourself. He said, don't let anyone punk you. And then he made a specific reference to Shaquille O'Neal. He pointed to Shaq as the model for how to handle being physically targeted night after night. He said Shaq got hit and hit and hit, and eventually started hitting back. He acknowledged that Clark is not the same size as Shaq, but the principle remains the same. When someone elbows you, you elbow them back. You do not disappear. You do not absorb it silently until you're carried off the court. Horry said this 2 weeks before Alyssa Thomas delivered a fist to Clark's throat on national television. He saw it coming. He described the exact dynamic that led to that moment. He named Shaq as the reference point. And 2 weeks later, Shaq was the one saying enough is enough after watching it happen in real time. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern that the WNBA should have addressed long before it reached this point. The fan reaction. When this clip hit social media, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans who watch every single WNBA game were outraged. But more importantly, and this is where the league needs to pay very close attention, fans who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives were now watching this clip and forming their first impression of women's professional basketball. One fan posted that the officials were a complete joke for not making a call. Another said it should have been an immediate technical foul with no debate. But the post that should concern the WNBA more than any other came from someone who openly admitted they don't usually watch women's basketball. They said they happened to be watching this specific game and wanted to know if what they just saw from Alyssa Thomas was normal. They said they were watching because of Caitlyn Clark, and what they witnessed in the second quarter gave them everything they needed to form an opinion about the league they had just been introduced to. The WNBA spent years trying to attract casual sports fans. They finally found the player who could do it. And those new fans tuned in and watched a fist connect with her throat with no consequences on national television. You cannot buy that kind of damage to a brand, and you cannot undo it with a press release. We're about to get to what the Indiana Fever's head coach said at the post-game podium, and she was absolutely furious. Her exact words should be required reading for every official and executive in the WNBA. Do not go anywhere. Stephanie White at the podium. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White did not come to the post-game press conference to be diplomatic. She did not choose her words carefully. She did not give the league the benefit of the doubt or speak in the measured language that coaches typically use when they want to stay on good terms with officials. She was furious. And she said exactly what she meant. She told the room that what happened to her player was completely unacceptable. She said it twice, because once was not enough. She pointed out that the league had already been aware of a similar incident just 2 nights earlier, meaning the officials walked onto that floor on June 24th knowing there was an active conversation about physical play directed at Clark. And it still happened again. And it was still not called. White made clear that it wasn't just one cheap shot. It was 2 separate contacts that officials saw and chose not to call. She said the failure to address it on the monitor, after having the technology and the time to make the right decision, made the situation even more insulting. A head coach stood at a podium and used the word insulting to describe how her league handled the safety of one of its players. That is not a normal post-game press conference. That is a coach who is not confident that the people running her league are going to protect the players in it. The analyst reaction. Professional analysts who cover this sport for a living were equally direct. Stacey Dales, who played in the WNBA herself and understands the physical realities of the game from the inside, made clear on social media that this was not a play that could be excused as competitive physicality. She called it disgraceful and said the league needed to take a hard look at what happened. Dave Portnoy, founder of Barstool Sports and someone who represents the enormous base of casual sports fans that the WNBA desperately needs to keep, called it a brutal, cheap hit and questioned publicly what the league was doing to protect its players. These are not voices from the fringe. These are not people with an agenda against the WNBA. These are mainstream figures with massive audiences who watched the same clip and came to the same conclusion. When professional athletes, veteran analysts, national media figures, coaches, and basketball legends all look at the same moment and describe it the same way, that is not a controversy. That is a consensus. Here's the question that nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone is thinking. Is this the moment that defines how the WNBA chooses to handle its biggest era of growth? Because the decision they make or don't make in the aftermath of June 24th will echo for years. I'll tell you exactly what I think needs to happen. Stay with me. What the WNBA must do. The situation on June 24th, 2026, presented the WNBA with a choice. Not a complicated one. Not one that requires weeks of deliberation or lengthy committee reviews. A clear and obvious choice about whether the most significant player in the history of the league, a player who has brought more new fans, more television attention, and more national spotlight than anyone in the sport's history, will be protected by the rules that every professional league is obligated to enforce fairly. This is not about one player being more important than another. This is about consistent enforcement. Every player in the WNBA deserves to compete knowing that deliberately targeting someone after the ball is dead will have consequences. Every player deserves to know that foul calls and ejections and suspensions are handed out based on what actually happened on the court, not based on which name is on the jersey. The NBA built its reputation for accountability through flagrant foul rules, through technical foul enforcement, through ejections that happened in real time when a play crossed the line. Players in the NBA know where the boundaries are because those boundaries are enforced consistently enough that no one seriously tests them without expecting a consequence. The WNBA reviewed a play on a monitor and walked away. That is the gap that needs to close. And it needs to close quickly because the fans who just discovered women's basketball through Caitlyn Clark are paying very close attention to whether the league takes this seriously. The bigger picture. Here is what gets lost in the immediate noise of a controversy like this. The WNBA is genuinely in a golden era. Television ratings are growing, arenas are filling up, jersey sales have surged, corporate partnerships are expanding. Young athletes across the country are watching the WNBA and dreaming about playing in it one day. This is not a struggling niche sport barely holding on. This is a league with real momentum and a real future. But momentum is not permanent. It has to be protected. And protecting it means showing every fan, the ones who have watched for decades and the ones who just started because of one particular player, that the competition they are investing their time and emotions in is being run fairly and professionally. When a casual fan turns on their first WNBA game and the first thing they see is an uncalled fist to the throat, the league does not get a second chance to make a first impression. That image becomes the lens through which they interpret everything that follows. And if the league's response to that moment is silence or inaction, that casual fan's conclusion is going to be that this is simply how things work here, and they will move on. Shaquille O'Neal spent his career absorbing physical punishment that would have broken most players. He never asked for special protection. He never expected opponents to go easy on him. But he competed in a league where the rules meant something, where flagrant fouls were called, where the line existed and people who crossed it understood there would be a price to pay. That is what he is asking the WNBA to be. Not a softer league, not a more delicate one. A fair one. A consistent one. One where the code that every professional basketball player understands is also enforced by the people responsible for enforcing it. Robert Horry saw this moment coming 2 weeks before it happened. He told Caitlyn Clark to protect herself because he wasn't sure anyone else would. That warning should never have been necessary. The fact that it proved accurate should tell the WNBA everything it needs to know about where things stand right now. Caitlyn Clark walked off that court on June 24, 2026, with a back injury caused by contact that should never have happened and should have been penalized the moment it did. She left a game that millions of fans were watching. She left because a referee stood on the baseline and chose not to act. Shaquille O'Neal, Hall of Famer, four-time champion, the most physically dominant player this sport has ever seen. A man who once called himself a Caitlyn Clark hater before she changed his mind one shot at a time, looked at what happened and said, "Enough is enough. When Shaq says enough is enough, you listen." Now the question isn't what happened. The video makes that perfectly clear. The question is what the WNBA decides to do about it, and whether the answer they give is one that the millions of new fans watching right now can believe in. That conversation is happening right now, in living rooms, on social media, in arenas, in front of cameras. And it is going to keep happening until the league provides an answer that matches the seriousness of what occurred on that floor. The future of women's basketball has never looked more promising. The talent has never been greater. The audience has never been larger. And the responsibility that comes with that has never been heavier. What happens next matters. Every call matters. Every decision matters. Every moment of accountability, or lack of it, matters. We will be covering every development as it unfolds. If you want to stay on top of this story and everything else happening across the basketball world, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell so you never miss a single video. We are here every day bringing you the stories that matter, the breakdowns that go deeper than anywhere else, and the analysis that actually respects your intelligence as a fan. Drop your thoughts in the comments. How many games should Alyssa Thomas be suspended? Do you think the WNBA will take real action or let this disappear quietly? And most importantly, do you believe Caitlyn Clark is safe on that court right now? Tell us what you think. We read every comment, and we will see you in the next one.